Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Dylan and Brittany?
Bryn.
Bryn. Okay. As you guys are aware, we've been recording all our consultations and trainings just to educate people. Okay.
Okay.
I saw the video that you sent earlier today, so thank you for that. So the reason for the consultation is, I know you're thinking of fostering a dog to adopt, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it can go so many different ways, and that's why it's really hard to give you a clear-cut answer.
Okay.
I mentioned, like, it's more so you're going into it with the mentality of, we hope there's no issues and we're going to do everything that we can, but if there is issues, then we'll address it, right? So to give you an example, I had a client maybe like 6 months ago. They fostered a Shih Tzu who had several foster fails because he was aggressive, okay? And he was attacking the husband. So they were using the training that the rescue provided, and they weren't getting anywhere. And they said, look, we'd really like to keep this dog, but we can't if this is going to be life. So they actually sent them to me, which I'm completely not on their list of trainers to send dogs to. So they send the dog, and I evaluate the dog. I'm like, he's not anxious, he's not nervous, he's just a jerk. And you know, he was possessing the wife, he was fine with her. And anytime the husband came into the home, it was just, he would attack. And everybody was like, you know, treats, affection, love, build the trust, you know, which trust, yes, you have to build. But the dog's being a bully. You know, he simply just came into home and said, this is my woman now, and you're competition, right? So when I told him this, everything that I told him, which ultimately ended up resolving the issue and they adopted the dog, was completely opposite of what they're being told at the rescue. Okay. So when I come in, I do what's necessary and what's appropriate to the situation. Like, I don't come in always with, like, this is the one all be all answer. There's a multitude of answers. It's not always what people are comfortable with. It's not always what people are wanting to do. You know, everybody wants to get things done with positivity and treats and stuff. It's not realistic. That's why there's so many dogs that get returned and stuff, because at the end of the day, it doesn't work. Okay. So in the videos that I saw, first one was like at his work. There's more going on than just a dog. Are you aware of that in those videos?
Yeah.
What are you seeing?
For me, like, I see both him and also his interaction with the volunteers. So Sarah's the one in all the videos. She's the volunteer we've been talking to, and she's the one who's been working with him for the last few months. Okay. He went to the pound in January, so he was not the first volunteer to work with him. Okay. But we got to talk to her in our second visit, and she even mentioned, like, Penn was not like this his first 2 months. He developed these behaviors in the pound, and around the March timeframe is when, like, he then got moved from adoptable to, like, he needs a foster that's going to put in the effort, and then potentially adoption. But, like, in the videos, and I even mentioned to Sarah in our second visit when we got to handle him and, like, really interact with him, I was like, Penn's smart. Like, there are some times where I'm like, I think he's fucking with you. Like, I think he knows that if he's bad and then he sits, then he gets a treat. Like, I think he's associated the whole situation, not just the sit. And so, like, when we were handling him, there were a few times where I would make him sit, and I was like, you don't get a treat. Like, you don't always get one. Like, because I think he's very smart. You can tell the 1 hour we spent handling with him, even that, like, by the end, like, I could tell he'd learned, right, something. So, like, yeah, for me, it's not just the dog. It's like, he's just too smart. Like, I'm like, he knows what he's doing.
Okay.
I would add, he's super attentive. I mean, we handled him twice. probably sum total for like 2.5 hours between like the 2 sessions. And I would say he's got like really great eye contact and he keeps checking for you, which to me means like this isn't just him doing something because, you know, some internal battle or some internal struggle. Like he is reacting to stimuli. He's reacting to you in some way, I think. So like when he had, like probably the worst incident with me was he was just being really goofy, and he was just like, he like laid on the ground and he like kept rolling over on his back, just like playing in the dirt. And then like I had to let the leash down for a second because like when he stood back up, it was like wrapped all around him. And that was when like he jumped up at me and tried to like grab me, and he like got my sweater and like ripped it, which is to say like it wasn't that bad. But then again, like there was, like I feel like to some extent there was a little bit of intent in what he did, right? To kind of like.
So when we talk about intent, there's, with humans, like when we do things with intent, like you mean it, right?
I don't think it's negative.
Yeah.
I don't, there's not a negative association here for me.
It's kind of like a child, like a 5-year-old. Like, I know if I do this, like you know, when a child like starts screaming and they know it's bad, but they know they're going to get what they want out of it. It's not, they're not trying to be a jerk, right? They know they're going to get what they want, though, regardless of the bad behavior that got them there. That's what I like feel in Penn is like, he's not doing it to hurt you. He's not doing it to be mean or anything. He's kind of got that little mischievous, like, I know if I'm bad and then I sit and I'm good, I get a treat, right? And it's like, that's not what I want you to learn. Like,
yeah. So dogs are really simple.
Yeah.
Okay. And the humans, we overcomplicate or overthink things.
Okay.
Okay. From what I see so far in Penn, he's the standard frustrated pity that I come across all the time. Okay. And I love pit bulls. I have a pit bull of my own. I've trained many pit bulls. The main problem is he just hasn't, because you said he developed these issues 2 months ago.
That's what the volunteers say. Yeah.
Right. So that's where the frustration is kicking in my opinion. And there's no consistency. He's in a cage all day. He goes out. They do, you know, a few minutes of play, a few minutes of training, and then it's back in the pen again.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no. That's why it's hard to evaluate, because even if you went from rescue to training facility to you, you're still not going to see Penn for himself until about 2 to 4 weeks in.
Yeah.
Even with the training.
Yep.
Okay. Because it would be essentially the same thing here, where it's not realistic to your environment because we don't have dogs loose with us living a day-to-day life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that it's not an option, but I just want to be very transparent and realistic, because most people think when they send a dog off, you know, like a puppy from a breeder and stuff, they're thinking they're going to get this finished product, you know, like a vehicle, and they can just take it off the lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always, when we were dealing with behavior stuff, I always will push people towards doing it themselves. Because one, at least if problems pop up, they're popping up as you're doing the training. Okay. And then we shift gears and we address things as we go along.
Yeah.
As opposed to investing money in training, but you still don't know what to get until you know. The other thing is, in the interactions with Sarah, she's the typical upbeat, optimistic, positive, sweet-talking energy, right?
Yeah.
That stimulates Penn. So then every time she pulls him out, she's going to see that from him because that's now the association.
Yeah.
You know, so if we have, you know, I always like to use school as a reference. When kids really respected the teacher and the bell rang and the teacher walks in, kids sit down, they put their stuff away, they stop talking, they clean up any mess, and it's time to learn. But I've also had, I had one teacher in particular that nobody respected, and kids would literally yell across the room answers to a test. And she would call in the principal would come in, lecture everybody, and we would be good for that class. And then the next class, the next day, back again.
Yep.
Because it was tied to her.
Mm-hmm.
There was no respect for her. There was respect for the principal, which changed things for that moment. So it's the same thing for the dog.
Yep.
You know, she's not, there is no real structure there, which is typical of any rescue. So I'm not basing, giving judgment there. But that's how when I look at it, I go, yeah, this is what I would expect being treated like that, being in the rescue, being in a cage, probably 22 hours out the day or whatever. I'm sure they do their best, but that's the reality of it,
Yep.
right? So when it comes to the problem with the jumping and stuff, that frustration, I would expect that to go away with structure. How do you say?
What was that?
What? Sorry.
Structure routine.
Routine.
Okay.
Yeah, like once we, this is my home. I get 3 walks a day. We go for an hour walk.
Mm-hmm.
Ball, I have a place to rest. I'm not in this little small area all day, every day for months, right? Then you start to see a lot of frustration go away.
Yeah.
But then the true dog starts to come out. And the reason why I say 2 to 4 weeks is because it's like when you go to a new school, if we go back in time, you didn't I'm not sure to say you, but a lot of people wouldn't just make friends right off the bat. You get acclimated, right? You make your one friend, and that one friend introduces you to more friends. And then next thing you know, you're comfortable with the school. It's the same thing for the dog, right? And in those first couple of weeks, he's testing, or he may test,
He's going to.
who can I overrun? Essentially how this works, right? Especially if he's coming from that.
Yeah.
There's already that precedent. And he's like, okay, this is what they let me just run amok.
Well,
Because
he's in the pound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We would foster through a rescue, which we already filled in some applications if we take him. But right now he's in the pound, which I think also is probably worse.
So he goes straight from the pound to our house.
Yes.
Okay. So, there's a lot of variables there. For instance, if I took a dog from a pound or rescue or from whatever, most people's inclination is because of that guilt, and they feel bad for the dog, is to coddle and give them everything free range and stuff. And it's the opposite.
Yeah. So that's one of the things we wanted to talk to you about was time frames and process. And for us, our inclination is to kennel him basically, because we can't trust him right now out of the kennel if we're not fully watching him, right? Mm-hmm. So our thought process was initially slowly build up time out of that with good behavior. And so eventually he can be out of that without being watched, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what you recommend in this procedure, in this process, but that's our inclination right now, just given that we both work during the day. We have time. We can set aside structured regimen and time throughout the day, but I do need to focus for an hour at a time, and so on.
I see what you're saying. So are you guys at home from quarantine?
Yeah,
for now,
will be for the foreseeable future.
But during normal times, we'll both be at work, and our thought process is he would be crated for most of the day, probably a dog walker in the middle. And then, given he builds up trust in the ability, then because I grew up with dogs, and after a year or two, we allowed them to roam their area alone out of the crate. But you build up to that trust, until they can do that, you get crated with a dog walker in the middle, and you build that trust and ability to then, roam your area outside the crate while we're at work.
Correct. That's good. Okay, because we're on the same page.
Okay.
Good. Because most people, it's mi casa, su casa. That's why dogs destroy things and stuff like that. And the quarantine, it's great because a lot of people have adopted from dogs from shelters. Places are empty.
Yeah.
But I don't think what a lot of people are aware of is that most people are just letting the dog be free with them all day. And when they go back to the 9 to 5,
terrible.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bad.
That's what I'm worried about.
We keep talking about this.
Yeah. It's like the Christmas rush when people buy puppies or something during the holiday, and it's a great gift, and you have this time off, and then you see especially an intake in February and March when they're oh fuck, I can't handle, I didn't know they were an animal or a live being, I can't deal with this, and then you get an influx.
Correct. So for for the most part, we can avoid that. Okay. Like for instance, even without me, with what you were saying so far with how you would handle it, you're already miles ahead of most people. Because you're already talking about creating a dog and a dog walker comes in once a day. Okay, because what you're doing is you're acclimating him to what life would be. So when when normalcy hopefully returns soon, and you leave, he's like, oh yeah, it's 9 o'clock. I go in my kennel and I just wait for dog walker. Cool, no big deal, right? So that's the main thing in terms of preventing things. Now there's always there's no guarantees with animals. Okay, you won't know until you leave for your 9 to 5 or whatever.
Sure.
But you will be at a much better position if you've already done your structure, and you've already done training, because then it's like, all right, we've already done everything. We just now need to fix this problem.
Yes.
As opposed to we've done nothing. Okay, which is a lot of people. We've done no crate training, we've done no training, and we have a dog with separation anxiety. I'm like, well, what do you think is going to happen? Okay, so all that's good. So it's really just once you get him, what I would focus on is the baseline for any behavioral issue, and what I see from Penn is minor, is leash walking. You guys,
Poor.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Caesar Milan, are familiar with Caesar Milan?
Isn't he the?
No.
Yeah, he's got like white gray hair.
Yeah, the Mexican guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're related somehow. So the one thing he does with dogs is he always walks them when he comes into the picture. That's like almost the first thing he does. And it resolves a lot of issues. Okay. So when I come into a home and a dog has behavioral issues, with the exception of real aggression is rare.
Yeah.
But whether it's dog reactive, human reactive, frustrated, like what you're seeing there, the structure behind proper leash walking can resolve a lot of those issues. So that's why when I see this stuff, like I go, okay, like this is nothing out the ordinary from what I'm seeing.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean I don't think about the other things that could happen.
Okay.
Right? So like if you took him, the first thing we would do is that leash walking exercise. We would talk about correcting behaviors that we don't want. An example, jumping, nipping, and all that stuff. And then we just play it by ear every week. Okay. Like I have a formula, but how he responds to everything is what dictates how that formula, moves forward. Now, I'm positive you guys have probably done some research on me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So you tell them about how I train.
Yeah. We saw some horror stories in places, so.
I'm sorry?
We did a lot of research on different trainers and facilities. There were quite a few horror stories on some people's. So yours was all positive, which is why on this call.
Yeah, it's been a long journey here, but yes, I train using e-collar, and all the reviews that you saw, all the videos you see on my YouTube and stuff, for the most part, are all e-collar trained dogs or dogs in e-collar training. The reason why I push it is because it's easy for the owner. So when I work with the dog, pre-COVID, I would work with them and then hand the dog to the owner, so the owner would see everything, so they would get a visual. And then I would coach them, and then I would give them their homework. Now with COVID, now it's completely contactless, whatever.
Yeah.
It's all verbal instruction. I don't even need to coach the dog. It's a little frustrating for people because they have to do it themselves, but it's easy to get.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing is, it makes a lot of sense once you learn the concepts. You understand how consequence works. So I was raised old school. I was spanked.
Yeah, me too.
So it hurt, but it wasn't, the intention wasn't to hurt me. So I always tell people.
Yeah. And
when we look at e-collar, even to this day, a lot of trainers still approach it as a punisher.
Yeah.
I say sit. If you don't sit, whammo. Okay. And the dogs don't connect that. They're too far apart. So if my mom said, wash the dishes, and I didn't wash the dishes, and she spanked me, I could connect that. And the next time I was told to wash the dishes, I knew to do it. Otherwise, I would get spanked. Dogs don't do that. Okay. So that creates issues and frustration.
Yeah.
So what I do is what's called pressure work. Have you ever seen someone pull up and then push down on a dog to make them sit?
Yes.
Okay, so that's pressure. It's physical pressure. So if you pull up the leash and you press on the butt and you do this motion, and then everything stops. So the dog goes, oh, when I feel this pressure, if I give you this response, everything goes away. Okay, that's how they learn. So when we do e-collar, when I get cases like yours, people are thinking like, I'm gonna just come in and slam, behaviors like that. And I go, no, because you can create more problems. The first thing I always do is structure. Discipline through the leash walking stuff. Because it allows me to quote unquote spank him, to teach him to lessons, and to teach him like, you better follow my lead, which then in turn shifts his state of mind, because he goes, oh, it used to be a free-for-all and I could do whatever I wanted. But now if I don't, this thing happens that I don't like, but as long as I'm paying attention to you, nothing happens. So then the dog starts to understand the concept of consequence, and then they start to change their behavior. That's how the theory of how it works. It doesn't always work that way. So if I get a case where it doesn't work that way, I go, it's okay. We've done the prerequisite work to educate the dog, so to speak. Now we can start addressing the behaviors. Okay, because it's like, why confront it if it'll go away with an indirect approach? Okay. The other thing we want to think about, this is very uncommon. Okay, but it comes. I see a lot with dogs that are pens, and I saw some tension in pen. Okay, I'm not saying this is a guarantee. I'm just saying this is a possibility. I get maybe 1 to 2 dogs a year where when we do e-collar work, they become aggressive.
Right.
Okay. And people or the owner will say, Jesse, are you making the dog worse? I go, no. I was like, what's happened is he's never been confronted. He or she's never been confronted. It's never been made to do something. So the problem was there, but now it's showing itself because we're confronting it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because we're putting consequence. We're adding, discomfort. So the dog goes, you know what? You don't tell me what to do, and let me teach you a lesson. And the way dogs, so it's essentially the dog correcting me for trying to correct them is the conversation. But to the human eye, it looks like the dog's being aggressive. Okay, so I had a dog last year or 2 years ago. It was a young man in his mid-20s, adopted a bulldog from the rescue, very sweet. And then I was like, I don't foresee any issues, blah, 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 blah. Day 1 of dog training with him, he tried to attack me several times. Okay. So the guy was sitting there, he's like, oh man, he's like, is this normal? I'm like, yes, for the personality type, no, in terms of the big picture of dogs. So I gave him the choice. I said, you can, I suggest you muzzle train this dog before we move forward for your, for everybody's security, but I won't hold it against you if you return this dog, because he didn't know. He just had the dog like a month. I didn't know, because when I came in, everything he had said was he's been friendly, no issues, no tension, nothing like that. He plays with dogs. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I came in and it was completely 180 from what we thought was going to happen. He ended up keeping the dog. We fully off-leash trained him. It was all through verbal coaching and stuff. And the dog never had tension with the owner. It was just with me. Okay. And my theory there is because the dog doesn't know me. There's no trust. Because I've had other cases very similar, like about 2 or 3, where when I worked with the dog would try to come after me. But when the owner worked with the dog, same exact stuff, same exact approach, nothing. Because that was a trusted individual.
Yeah.
That's my theory. So those are things like in an email, I can't just raffle off to you like, well, this and this and this and this. But I tell you because in worst case scenario, I want you to already know, like, Jesse predicted this may be a possibility. He said most likely not, but at least we were prepared for it.
Right.
Yeah. So do Do we have to use any? So I just have such bad experience, like, and like not just personal. Like, I grew up with a dumb dog, and he didn't get it. He ended up burning himself. We never used it again. It was like after a week. He was just too stupid. He couldn't figure it out. But then I've also had like just growing up like bad experience, like people, and I get it. They weren't using it properly. I totally understand that, but I'm just not in love with the idea. The way we actually grew up and taught our dogs was with the prong collar, where they learn to release themselves, right? Like when they're pulling, they are kind of choking themselves, but then when they pull back, it releases. And so it's still giving them that negative, positive reinforcement, but without the like shock.
So the reason I moved away from prong, I love prong. It's a great tool. There's a lot of technical skill involved. Okay. Right. And right now with what you just said, and this is a very common thought process among people, is you said, when the dog would feel pressure, they would go back on, they release it. But a prong collar is not the dog teaching itself. It's the human proactively applying it to teach the dog. Right? So the dog should not be feeling pressure because they're pulling. It's actually the handler should be using the tool to communicate with the dog. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
The other problem to it is that when we do the corrections with the prong, is that there's more confrontation involved because it's you actively yanking the leash, right? With the e-collar, the dog doesn't know where it's coming from. So, and I understand we've had negative experiences. One, I've never had an e-collar burn a dog. Okay, so that can be the times that I've seen that, like online and stuff. They look like those cheap $40 to $80 e-collars.
Yeah.
Also, depends on the model that you're using.
Yeah.
You get what you pay for, essentially, right? And I'm not saying that there's any risk or not any risk because it's electric, right? Like there's cell phones that explode on people.
Yeah.
So it happens, but it's like, oh, it happened to one dog. It's terrible. Like, well, it happens with cell phones too, and maybe microwaves and all that stuff, right? There's margin for error.
Sure.
But I've myself seen it. Now, if you leave it on for too long, dogs can develop pressure sores.
Yep.
Which is why I educate people, either get an adapter or make sure you rotate it every hour and a half to 2 hours to prevent that. But the dog's only going to be wearing it when you need it.
Okay.
Okay, so the theory here would be with the structure of the leash walking and just formal discipline, you're really not using it in the home. Does that make sense?
When do we use it then?
Whenever you walk him and whenever you would need control.
Okay.
So like if
we're in the
backyard and potentially we have neighbors on either side of the fence or dogs on either side of the fence.
Correct, right? And then when it comes to the tool or any training method, whether it's positive or negative, the expectation is once I teach this dog, I won't have to do anything at a certain point, right? Because the dog should just know.
Right.
The dog can do that.
You're only using it for training, and then it's kind of like you don't need it anymore.
That's the common thought process. And what I tell people is, well, one, you're teaching a dog a skill, right? And the way dogs think is, can you make me do this or not? Okay, so it's kind of like a kid. Dogs have a learning capacity of a 3 to 4-year-old child.
Yep.
Okay.
You have to tell a 3 to 4-year-old child what to do.
Yeah.
Go get dressed, go do your homework, clean the dishes, right? And like going back to my mom, like she spanked me, like those words had meaning because there was repercussions if I didn't, right? Dogs are the same way. Okay, and technically, I mean, humans are like we have laws and prisons and judges and jails and cops, but some people still commit crimes, right? So even though obedience is nothing like to that scale, like that's kind of how the dog perceives it, So he's like, oh, you have the collar on today. I'm gonna be a good boy because I know there's consequence. And then there's no collar. Oh, well, what happens when I try to pull this way? And what happens when I jump on you today? And what happens when I bark at that dog? Nothing? Okay, so I know, he becomes a gambler.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but so then...
How do you, do you
then
ever get to take that collar off?
So the collar's always on when we need...
When you need it.
But like for like the next 7-10 years, like there's
You
never.
get outside with them, correct.
Oh.
Okay. That's the realistic, in my book, expectation.
Hmm.
Okay. And there's a couple of reasons for this. So like my dogs are off leash trained. They've been off leash trained for 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
But when I go out with them, if I know they're going to go off leash, they're collared up because they're dogs. They see a squirrel, a dog charges us off leash out of nowhere that we don't know. My dog's perceived threat, right? They don't see the world like we do.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't use it like it's there. But if they made a mistake, I'm not worried because I can just get it back. You know, so it's not like you're always using it. It's just present. So it's like, you guys drive?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you go on the expressway?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you go the speed limit?
No.
You see, and what do you do when you see a squad car?
Slow down.
Sometimes.
See, it's dogs.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
So
why I
then,
say.
when do you shock? Like, so then when do you shock them? Because like you were kind of mentioning, like you can't be like a negative, like he doesn't do what I say, and so then I'm just gonna shock him. So like when do you use like the shock?
Okay, so we use it. So in the beginning, we have the pressure work that I was telling you about, and the learning phase, right?
Yep.
I use it to teach everything from beginning to end. The sits, the downs, the place, the heel, the recall. It shapes everything, right? So the way the dog learns is, like if Jesse says come, the remote's gonna happen that fast unless I move faster than the remote. Okay? So I'm very generous with the remote. I use it as much as possible. So the dog goes, I don't ever want to delay when Jesse says something because remote happens like that. But if I move fast enough, I can avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Most people repeat things 20 times before they use the remote.
Mm-hmm.
So the dog knows they have a 20-second delay there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But people want to give the dog the opportunity to do the right thing so they don't have to use the aversive because they feel guilty. Okay? I don't do that. I use every opportunity to use the remote so I never have to worry about the dog not listening in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But dogs are still dogs and life happens. So I had one client, they're walking up Halstead by Belmont,
Mm-hmm.
his daughter and his dog. A bike crashed behind him, scared the dog. Dog jumped up, hit the ground running, pulled the leash out of his hand, took off for blocks. Okay, that would have been prevented with e-collar. I had another dog. They were in an actual training session. We were at the Skinner Park in the West Loop.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 7-8 o'clock on October, and we're training his dog off leash, and we're at the park, and somebody set off a random firework. And as soon as I saw it go in the sky, I looked around because there was dogs there, and I go, "Who's gonna run away?" Because I'm expecting somebody to run in fear, right? Blew up. His dog scattered. He hit the remote. The dog came right back to him. Okay. And I've had others. I had a client whose dog ran off and was confronted by a deer in Lincoln Park. I posted about it on my Instagram. And he called the dog, and the dog was e-collar, and he got the dog back like that. And he's like, Jesse, I don't know what I would have done if it wasn't for the e-collar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I train for what people don't expect to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and most people live their life as if nothing bad can happen. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think we have enough on that. Moving on a little bit, just to understand a little bit better about like expectations and time frames of things. For a dog like Penn, with what limited knowledge that we have, you know, how long on average does it take to mitigate this behavior?
The what I'm seeing there is like probably between the first week to the second week.
Okay.
So if we don't get that resolved within that first week, come the second week, and you told me like Jesse's still being like jumpy and nippy, then we'll take class 2 to go, okay, well, what I planned on working didn't work. No big deal. We're gonna do this instead.
Okay.
Because it's just about consequence for behavior. He's just not had consequence.
Yeah. We kind of told
Yeah,
Sarah
we
the
can
second
settle
time.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
I was
sure.
like, Sarah, you're being.
Okay, that makes sense. And then what would be, I guess, how long would it take before we would know if he is learning? And I guess you talked about that, like that 3 to 4 week time frame. Would you expect after 3 or 4 weeks we would have a really good sense of like who he is, or a better sense of like
Yeah, I would
his
expect so.
issues
It's
are?
really, in most cases, more often than not, it's 2 weeks. But it, it can happen where it's a month later.
Yeah.
Typically 2 weeks in, but I say 3 to 4 weeks just so that you at least go in with I'd rather over kind of exaggerate that period than under,
Yeah.
because then it's like, oh crap, like it happened 4 weeks in as opposed to the second weekend. So
Sure.
That makes sense.
But so based on the videos, I think our biggest thing is not necessarily the effort, the time, even the money to an extent. Like we're willing to put all that in. It's more like if he can't develop out of this behavior, like we can't have him like this, for his next 7 to 10, however long he lives, right? He's only 4. So like if he can't be trained out of this, then like we can't keep him. And so that's our biggest concern is ensuring that he can. So I know you can't answer that 100%. Like we haven't been with Penn long enough, but like based on what you've seen, like, do you think that that is feasible?
it comes down again to what you're willing to do and tolerate. So I deal with some very highly aggressive human dogs. Okay, where you come in, you're like, why the hell would you want to keep this dog? Right? But I don't come in to judge. My job, the way I look at my job, is to keep dogs in the home. Because even if it's a dog that's a complete jackass and highly aggressive, and the owner's like, look, Jesse, I know he's not going to love people and stuff, but if you can give me the tools so I can be safe, my dog can be safe, and those around me can be safe, I'm happy. And they understand, like, I'm not going to have that life with the dog that I wanted, right? That's actually the most important part. Because it doesn't matter if shit goes south, because there's always an answer.
Right.
It's just what you're willing to do, what you're willing to accept. So like when I get dogs that are fighting within the home with each other, everybody wants to go back to normalcy, right? They want to go back to like they were cuddle on the couch together and sleep together and play all the time, and we would sleep as a family, and then all of a sudden it's just fight after fight after fight. I'm gonna go, probably not gonna happen. And if you want these dogs to coexist, it's almost like prison control, where they don't get any opportunity to interact to that degree because there's potential of a fight amongst the two, And some people are fine with it. They're like, if that's what it takes to keep these 2 dogs, fine. And others are like, they're too stuck on the idea of going back to, pre-dog fight.
Okay.
That's why I think I mentioned the email. I'm like, the dog, I'm not worried about the dog and stuff, because I've dealt with in my book, I've dealt with everything. It just comes down to your comfort. If I see something of concern, I'll call it out right away, and I'll say like, hey, this might be an issue. And we maybe, if we have to muzzle train them, we muzzle train them as a precaution. So this way, when we need it, if we need it, we have it. As opposed to, we waited to see what would happen, and now we really need it, and it's a problem.
So one question I have is like, what does the first few weeks look like, given that like, we know he has this behavior right now, and we can't leave him, unattended right now. So my thought process was we create him and then we take him out for, regimented amount of times and, try to guide this behavior in the right direction and keep everything very regimented initially, right? I guess from your perspective, what does this look like in the first few weeks?
So when we talk about regimen and stuff, it's not as strict. And if I made it seem that strict, then I apologize. It's really just whatever your life would look like. Right. So the main thing would be, if you work a 9 to 5, he's definitely going to be kenneled 9 to 5. If you want a dog walker to come, I have no problem with that. If that's something that you're going to keep in the long run. Okay. If it's like, no, we would just have a dog walker for the first few months and then we would stop, then I would say, then it's pointless. Don't even do it. Because he's already an adult dog. Your puppies for sure need multiple outings.
Yes.
Adult dog, he can be kenneled for 8 to 9 hours. He'd be just fine. And then, so if I took 10 and he was in my home, what it would look like is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, he's kenneled. In the morning, I'd wake up, I'd run him out to go potty, I'd feed him. If I had time to walk the dogs that day, he would get a structured walk. And then we'd come back home, and then he'd go in the kennel. I'd work 9 to 5. At 5 o'clock, I'd come out, let the dogs out. If I do another long structured walk, we would do that, come back inside, and then we just be couch potatoes. Now, structure is more kind of like what he's allowed and not allowed to do. So he wouldn't be allowed on the couch with my dogs and myself. He wouldn't be in the bed. The affection things that he has to earn. That's the kind of structure stuff. Okay. So there's like routine, and then there's like what he can and can't do. And then you have your obedience training. Okay, so obedience training and behavior training are very different. So I look at obedience as education, math, English, science, they come. I look at behavior as morality. Don't jump, don't bark, don't bite, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat. Okay, so you have a smart person who's a terrible person, and a good person who's not a smart person, right? It's the same thing for the dog. So when I get dogs, if back like when I used to train out of my home, if I didn't have time to train them immediately, it was always consequence for the stuff I didn't like at minimum, but I didn't have any issues. It's more important to teach the dog what not to do and what it can do than the obedience stuff. Okay? But the obedience is part of the control factor. Like you don't want him pulling you. I have a client right now that broke his shoulder because his dog pulled him. Sent him to the ER. So that's why that stuff is necessary. It does help in the overall picture. But really, in Penn's case, it's really just structure and discipline. Okay. Question, Dylan?
That makes sense. So basically what you're saying is from day one, he would be kenneled from 9 to 5. And then after that, he would be not kenneled inside of our place, right? He would be allowed to roam around the first floor.
If that's what life would look like, correct.
That's exactly what it would look like. But then
he has to earn that, though. I think it's
what I'm
only
wondering
a few
is
months.
like, if that is what it's supposed to look like, or rather, if we're trying to mimic what is like will eventually look like, which I think that's a good idea. But then how do we resolve those kinds of behavioral problems that we see, right? Like if he's out with us and he tries to jump and bite us, right? Then like on day 1, day 2, day 3, like what are the repercussions of that, right?
Right. So because you're thinking about targeting the problem head on.
Well, I'm thinking about like not getting us, severely injured or bit because like we aren't able to manage that initially, right?
Right. Because you're how I'm hearing it is it's being you see that? Okay. This I don't pick up from Penn. From his behavior. Okay. That nipping, biting stuff is just a frustrated dog. Right. And I think what it's kind of being picked up is that it can escalate to this.
It's not so much that it escalates to that, it's that like we're going to have that happen in our own home initially, right? That's the thought process, at least initially, until like he settles down.
I think it's also that like while he's not meaning to do like what your hand is, he is 45 pounds of muscle, right? And so while he's expressing frustration or the need for attention, he's not necessarily doing it safely. And he may like, again, he's not like going out like, I want to murder you. It's like, I want your attention and I'm strong and I just want it and I don't know how to control myself. So I'm, using my claws and my teeth, not to like, I'm not holding and latching and biting into your skin to rip you apart. I'm nipping at you, but with a pretty, strong jaw because I'm a 45-pound pit bull. Like,
For instance, he was adopted in April for 3 days, right?
And he got returned.
He got returned because he did this exact same behavior, right? And apparently, and this I see as the fault of the pound, before he was adopted, they never actually had the owners handle him.
Yeah, which is odd.
Right, and so like we have handled him. We've been in the pen with him.
Yeah.
You know, we have gotten the scrapes and some like ripped up coats and whatnot. So like we have a good understanding of like actually what we think he will be like. But functionally, like he did the same behaviors that he was doing with us, in the yard, at home with them, right? For those in those first 3 days, right? So I guess my point is like he's going to do those things. What do we do?
For the
How do we
first,
manage
he's
that?
gonna do them until he learns.
You correct them. I mean, because I've seen this a lot, and that's where a lot of my judgment comes from. So if I seem like dismissive or anything like that, I'm not trying to be that way. It's for me, I'm not really seeing a big problem. Because in my head, I'm going, once the dog is disciplined, I'm really not seeing that being an issue.
Yeah.
If it is an issue, it's an easy fix. It's just he needs to be corrected for that behavior.
Right.
And the correction in this case to you looks like what?
It can either be through the remote collar,
Okay.
and when we think about correcting these behaviors, because people see the behavior like aggression, they typically think you're going to come in and you're just going to beat the dog.
No.
Right? And I go, no, that's not how it works. Okay. That's the thought process.
Yeah.
Right? Everything's appropriate to the dog. Okay.
Yeah.
So a consequence to him, so if we take Penn and he did that behavior to another dog and they corrected him, what do you think that correction would look like?
It depends on, it has to be immediate, right? Otherwise, he's not going to actually.
The association won't be
it
there.
won't sink
It'll be
in.
too late.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what would the dog do? What would they utilize to correct Penn?
At the pound?
Another dog. Like, let's say, just as an example, if
Another
the
dog
Penn
do?
was jumping at a dog, right, and that dog didn't like it, how would they correct Penn?
The other dog would snap back at him.
Yeah, snap, possibly bite him back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So dogs are physical animals. They correct each other through physicality. Okay, this is why the food stuff doesn't work, because food is great for what you want to see again. It is terrible. It does not work for things you don't want to see again.
Yeah.
Okay? So when we talk about correction, your e-collar for one could be used for that. A prong collar can be used for that, because a prong collar is a bite. So if Penn had it, and I'm not saying I'm against prong collars, but if you used one, so like I have clients that do that, they have a prong. I have actually a lady with a 3 or 4 month old German Shepherd puppy, and her dog's got a prong collar, and then it's got a short leash. Whenever the puppy does something, she can just go over, grab the leash, and correct the puppy. You see? So that would be a correction. So if Penn jumped on me, just grab the leash and correct him.
Okay.
Right? And when it comes to stopping behaviors, it's actually, in most cases, when it's not, how do you say, a severe behavior, or it's not fueled by real underlying issues like anxiety, it's very quick. Right? I mean, for humans, like for me growing up, for example, love my mom. I said the word sucks. I said the word screwed in front of her. One of my friends got ripped off, and I was on the phone. And I was like, "Yeah, he got screwed in that trade," and boom, out of nowhere, and I was just like, and my mom said, "Don't you ever say that word around me."
You got muted.
Uh-oh.
I can't hear you.
Hello? What about now?
Is it just, maybe it's us?
Maybe connection.
No.
Uh-oh.
Something happened.
Oh wait, now you're muted.
Oh,
No,
there it is.
Okay, yeah, it was probably connection.
Yeah.
So, she consequence, and she said, "Don't you ever say that around me again."
Yeah.
Right? I don't talk that way around my mom.
Yeah.
It was that's what the verses are for. That's why like this stuff is, for me, from what it's seeing in those videos, right? I go, I'm not worried about it, because corrections will fix all that stuff. You know,
Yeah.
the issue would be if I said, you know, you have to remote him or you have to prong collar him or whatever method I gave you, and you went, I'm not comfortable with that. Give me something else. And I'm like, well, I just gave you everything and you just X it all out.
Yeah.
What do you expect me to do?
Yeah.
That's where the problem happens.
Yeah. I think for us, it would be like a tiered approach. Like I'm not sure we would feel comfortable nor want to necessarily go all of the way with like the e-collar initially, and maybe try
I don't know.
like
I think we'd have to talk
we
about
have to discuss it.
Yeah. I think I'd probably be willing, like, one, I'd probably buy it regardless of what happens, just so that it's there.
As a
Yeah. But we might want to try the prong. I don't know. We can talk about that after this, but like, I'd probably at least buy it just to be like, you know, I get if used appropriately, it's safe, like, and I'm not 100% against it. So I'd like to have it, right? Just so that, you know, if we have to use that method, it's fine. But we might want to talk about like potentially trying the pronged at first, and then like we already have the collar. If it's like, fuck it, we're failing it. Like,
it's not an effective tool for him.
Yeah, or we
And
can't
so,
do it. Like
yeah.
I'm totally not being like, if we can't use the prong collar or it's not working on pen, I'm not about to like continue to force a bad, like, fine, we'll move.
Yeah.
But we might want to try it at first, but we can talk about that and do more research afterwards to see if like maybe we'll be fine with using the e-collar just to begin with, or if. But regardless, I think we'll buy it just to have it safe on hand.
Yeah.
What I suggest is if you go to my YouTube channel, I've been uploading complete, uncut, unedited videos of me training dogs with e-collar.
Okay.
Okay. And there's one that I put up recently. The gentleman signed up just the last week. It was his first class. He had a second class yesterday. And he has a pit, a very friendly pit, jumping on people and stuff like that. And his videos are really good. Like when e-collar can go as best as it can go, that's the video.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's always like that, but for the most part it is. And when it's not that smooth, it's because I'm dealing with behavior issues.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
Every case is different. I've seen, like, at this point in my career, I'm not surprised when I see stuff anymore. I just go, okay, time to shift gears. That's not anymore. We got to do it this way now.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, but I think seeing it would, and it's just a kind of, it'll help you understand it a bit more.
So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was that we have, I mean, we can just show
I was
you.
like, we could just show it.
So this is like our little backyard area.
Okay.
There we go. So it's just like two fences on either side with homes on either side, with dogs on either side and kids on either side. And those fences are 3.5 feet with little slots in it. And the kids are like anywhere from like, I don't know, 4 through like 10.
11?
Yeah.
Something.
And they have dogs. Well, one of them's getting a dog through like paws or something. And then the other one has a dog already. Not aggressive, at least not that we can tell. Doesn't seem to be aggressive with other dogs either. But for us, like, obviously we're not going to be able to just let him go in the backyard initially on his own, right, without a leash. That seems like a process that we build up to. How would you recommend us introducing him to that?
Just, you know, it's all about rules and boundaries. One thing is, if you want him to go potty in one specific spot and not ruin your yard, you always do that on leash for months because you have to condition habit. And then at that point, you know, let's say you decide I'm not going to take you on a leash, but I expect you to still go in that spot. That's where reversal is play. And I had this happen with a client with a shepherd. He was trained to go to one spot, and then, you know, she would run him out but stay inside, but she would watch him through the window. And he would try to sneak and pee off somewhere else, and she would remote him, and he would just run back to his bathroom spot and do his business. Okay. But you have to get the habit down first. You know, like, that's one thing. I think the biggest thing is going to be territorial aggression towards the neighboring dogs. Okay. And I've had dogs be highly aggressive at the fence, but play with that same dog outside.
Yeah.
because he's closed-minded. He's thinking this is our yard, you know, like he doesn't care if he's played with the dog before. He's just like, this is our territory, right?
Even though we have not seen that behavior or not heard of that behavior yet at the pound, you still think that might be an issue, or?
Yeah, because the pound isn't his home.
But
Okay.
it has been for 6 months. Like
Even
he still doesn't associate. Okay.
Because it's a very unrealistic, overwhelming environment. He's flooded. He's got dogs barking all over the place.
Yeah.
That's why I don't take the pound or the behavior at the pound. I've even had dogs, bite at the pound. And I'll get all the information, like, well, tell me what happened. And I go, okay, it sounds like just like too much stress. And then this happened, which makes sense.
Right.
So take the dog out the pound, we remove the stress, we shouldn't see the bite anymore, or that type of aggression.
Right.
Because you're going to give him something to protect. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So that's where it comes from. He's not coming from a bad place. He's coming from an instinctual place.
Right.
Like, when you go out, that's your neighbor from 2+ years, and that's your neighbor that just moved in. They're getting a dog from Paws. Like, you already know that. He will never know that.
Yeah.
He will never associate that.
Yeah.
What he will associate is what he's allowed to do and not allowed to do, which is, we can't make him buddies with the dogs behind fences, but you should be able to stop any kind of reactivity towards the fence. Yeah. I'm extra cautious, especially with kids. Most kids, they just go up and pet dogs.
Yes.
They climb the fence too. Like, honestly, my biggest concern is not the dogs. Like, I'm like, if he barks at the dogs, like, yeah, we can train that. But, like, the slots are just big enough for them to poke their nose, but they can't open. Like, they're so small that they can't open their mouths. So I'm like, they can't hurt each other. Like, I'm less concerned about the dogs. I'm more concerned with the fence is 3.5 feet and the kids climb it. They already do. They run across our yard. Yeah. Already told the parents, like, we're adopting a dog and you need to get your kids under control because I don't want children, so I'm not planning, I don't need to plan for a dog that needs to be good with kids, so you need to get your kids in line. But, like, they're also kids. Like, I understand that, like, they're potentially going to climb the fence and sit on it, and I'm like, Penn is at a state right now where I could totally see him just gunning and pulling one of them down, and, like, I'm just like, that's not the situation I want to be in.
Then what ends up happening is, because kids are kids and they get scared, is it pulls more out of them, potentially. Yeah. Right? Because it sounds like a screaming animal. This is a very common thing that I get when, like, I hear about dogs biting families' kids. Either unattended, or they were playing and everything was fine until the kid got scared because things got uncomfortable. They screamed, and then the dog bites because now it sounds like prey. Yeah. Dogs, he's an animal at the end of the day. So unfortunately, that's a very tricky situation. And technically, let's say Penn were to be out there and you ran real quick inside, and one of the kids goes, "Oh, look at the new dog, let's hop over." And Penn's just like, this is territorial mode. And he bites the kid. In his world, it's definitely a valid bite. Because he doesn't know that the kid doesn't intend harm. Okay? I remember in Florida, I had a client when I was doing my internship. The neighbor jumped the yard to go into another yard, and the dog bit him in the ass. He got sued for $100,000 and lost his home insurance.
Jesus.
Yeah. And it was a valid, I'm like, why were you jumping in his yard?
Yeah.
Like, it sounded super suspect, but the guy, in Chicago, the laws are, if your dog is off leash, you are responsible. And that includes on your own property. Yep. So if somebody just stuck their hand through a fence and the dog bit them through the fence, it is your fault. Even though it's your property. In my book, it's like, no, why are you sticking your hand through my fence? Right. So is that something, like, obviously his first few months, we will not let him in the backyard off leash by himself. Like, we'll be monitoring him, but, like, I would like for it to be, like, at some point, hopefully a couple months down the line, where, like, we don't have to worry about that. Like, obviously I'm not saying, like, we're going to leave him in the backyard for hours and never check on him and, like, just hope he never bites anybody. But, like, like, we could sit inside here and just kind of, like, casually watch him or something. Like, is that something that is feasible, or, like,
we are always going to have to be like out there with him, 100% on guard, like watching him.
That's a yes or no answer.
Okay.
Okay. So if I were inside and you were outside and you have clear line of sight, right?
Yep.
Right. Is if things like, let's say it's been months and you see a potential situation, the one thing would be, well, how are you going to stop it? Right? Do you know what my next thing is going to be?
E-collar.
E-collar, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing, all right? The other thing would be, in my book, I don't like leaving dogs unattended. And I know what you said, like you wouldn't be for hours on it and all that stuff. But there's so much disconnect. Like you'd have to get up, run to the door, open the door, get the pen.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And within that 15 to 30 seconds, a lot can happen.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing is, if he figures out how to jump that fence,
Oh, God.
it's like, good luck trying to teach him not to do it. It's a pain in the ass. So if you're out there, you can be proactive about that.
God.
Okay?
That's a nightmare
I can't think
scenario.
about that.
So, and I mean, I've seen some dogs do some crazy shit.
Oh, no, no, the other dog at the pound, there's 2 right now that are potential foster to adopts. Talina's the other one. Within 30 seconds of hearing from the volunteer, we were like, absolutely not. She was like, so she's dog reactive, and when she's a dog, she'll clear a 6-foot fence. And we were like, nope. Our little measly 3.5 feet ain't gonna work. Like, that's out.
Like walking pen, he was like jumping up on, like he stepped up onto.
He steps up onto like the porch furniture, but we've never seen him like.
He like climbed on top of like a table. So like that's like 3.5 feet tall, and I was like,
climbed it. He didn't leap it.
He didn't leap it,
we've never seen him. But I mean, you're right. Like it's possible, right? He's 45-pound pit bull. Like he could, if he wanted to, clear it.
And if we go back to that, a dog is a 3 to 4 year old child. It's like, would you leave your 3 to 4 year old child unattended? You know?
Mom would say yes.
Back in the day, my mom left us out, right?
My mom was like, well, you know, you're the oldest, it's fine. You watch your 1-year-old, it's fine.
Yeah, no, I'm the exact way, right? But now things have changed. Yeah, like I don't would ever leave my dogs. And I was in Texas for a short period, and that really had a big impact on me because dogs were stolen from the backyard. And I know yours is neighbors and stuff.
Yeah.
A dog stole actually one of our dogs. A neighbor stole one of our dogs. You know, if he learns how to escape, good luck. And that's going to happen when he's unattended because the brain's going to get, and dogs are great at finding little spaces where like, hey, I can get through here.
Yeah.
And then just, you know, if something happened and there's just that disconnect, you know, not saying that you can't. I tell everybody at the end of the day, your dog, your house, your rules.
Yeah.
I'm just going by experiences, other clients' experiences. And if there's potential, you know, especially with the power breed, unfortunately, if something happened with him, like he has very minimal, how do you say, like he doesn't have a lot of chances when it comes to pitties, unfortunately.
Yeah, we know. Yep. That's why we're so diligent and want to make sure, you know, we get a good trainer and stuff.
So many
like
people
that.
have such negative connotations towards them. There's so many laws set up not
so
in their
sad.
favor.
No, well, the other thing is, I had a client who I trained a while back, and she was leash dog reactive. We got all that fixed. She was great. And a couple of years ago, she was walking her dog, and their neighbor was walking their golden retriever, a 12-year-old boy. And the dog pulled the leash out the boy's hands. Attacked their bulldog pit mix. Okay, the pit fit back in defense, and you know everybody was fine. But guess who got the blame?
The pit.
Even though the golden retriever is the one that broke from the leash, ran across the street, and attacked the dog, and bit the dog as well. The pit did not get. The golden retriever did not get any repercussions. It was all in the pit.
God.
You know.
So sad.
It sucks. So it comes down to, you know, again, comfort, what you're willing to do and accept. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's easy peasy. And you're like, damn it, Jesse, you like made this big old, you know, we're stressing about it.
I don't think so. Penn is too sassy to be easy. He's gonna try to test us.
You would be surprised. A little discipline can go a long way. You know, the client that I have right now, she's absolutely the one that broke her husband's shoulder, is absolutely amazed. And I, from the training, I'm like, and she did a testimonial. It's on the YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
And she's like, I didn't think this was gonna work because of social distancing. I'm like,
Yeah.
one, I'm good, and then two, remote prong is great. Prong is great as well, but just be aware that if you correct Penn, there, how do you say, if he's resilient to it, it's not going to be effective.
Right.
I've had that happen.
Like growing up, like that was the one thing about the prongs that, like, one of the dog that I grew up with, nothing really worked on him. Right, we never tried e-collar. We never went that route. But like the prongs and the choker and all those things never really worked. They weren't really that effective on him, right?
Every dog has a breaking point, and that's why e-collar is so effective. Is if I need, so my collar goes 0 to 127. Some brands go 0 to 8. Okay? 8 and 127 are the same. I have 119 more dividends.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can really fine tune it. But the other thing is output. If there's not enough output to override the brain, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
That's why there's different models, and that's why I recommend what I recommend, because I'll tell people, like, yeah, if you have a pit, they can be very stubborn and they can be very sensitive. But I always like to opt for the worst case scenario, so this way, if it ends up being that, we're already prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's not that, then great. Then we get more from less power. Is all it is. So. Yeah, it's really kind of remains to be seen. Unfortunately, I think if anybody tells you like, yeah, it'll be no problem, we'll take care of it, I would be very cautious of that kind of person. Okay, it comes down to what you're willing to do and what you're willing to accept. Okay. I've worked with some highly aggressive cases, and I love those dog owners so much because they, I gave them the minimum and the maximum, and they're like, yeah, like I love this dog so much. Let's do it. I'm there. Like, there's an answer. It may not always be the one you want to hear, but there's always an answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
I think you've got almost everything.
You had your list.
Might even be everything. Hang on.
I can't think of anything.
Having people over and having especially like other dogs over or other kids over.
Mostly adults, but.
Yeah, I mean, like occasionally we will have other dogs visit, like whether it's tiny dogs or big dogs. And additionally, like little kids, right? Like I have a 2-year-old niece. And once life returns to normal, like, we will have people visiting. But the idea is like, how would we introduce him to them in like a safe way, right?
Sure. There's approaches to that. It's if you've got all your structure down, it's one way would be, you tell Penn to go lay down on a bed and he can't move from the bed, right? So when the people come in, he can't jump on them. That's like one approach. There's also an approach where when the people come in, he's going to be stimulated. He hears a doorbell. Whether he's territorial or excited, it can go either way. There's a process for that, but it's all about de-escalating them. So the jumping isn't the problem. The problem is overstimulation.
Right.
Okay. So if we resolve the overstimulation, the idea is you don't get the jumping. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But we also got to talk about the environment. So if like a 2-year-old child comes in and goes, Penn, right? And so like walking through,
that's gonna happen.
And he gets all excited, right? There's only so much that I expect from dogs, so it's kind of both. They go hand in hand. Like, we teach the child how to correctly approach a dog because it may keep that child safe in the long run. Dogs bite kids all the time because of improper introductions.
Yep.
Okay, so that's one part of it. And the other part of it, of course, is keeping Penn under control, and they go hand in hand. Everybody puts so much on the dog.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you know, if the environment is not in favor of the dog to an extent, like the dog will fail no matter what.
Right.
You know, but I don't want you to think like, oh, this is gonna take so much work. It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then in the beginning, it's kind of like, if it's not your norm, it's a little bit of work because you got to get used to it. But for me, like, I'm so used to doing things a certain way now that I don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just boom, instinctual. I'm like, all right, boom, 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 I'm gonna do this. Nope, you can't touch my dog. Da, da, da. You know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm not worried. I was just, if you get past the first few weeks and things are fine, I'm not too worried about anything other than if this were 6 months
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have visitors during that time,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden 6 months down the line, it's like, oh, we can finally have guests come over.
Yep.
That's a new context.
Yes.
Okay. So if something happened, I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't be deterred because I go, yeah, it's been 6 months. Like, his norm is completely shifted now.
Yeah.
Right.
There's answers.
To some extent, like, I think we have some solutions so that that won't happen. Like, we can do like a social distancing out in the backyard or something,
So
right?
we'll hopefully get
Have 'em
some
introduced to,
more
right?
interaction.
Be introduced to other people, right? So it's not just us all the time.
And
Yeah,
the neighbors, right? Then like we'll probably like maybe like if he's doing well, like maybe have the neighbors like have their kids like properly introduced to Penn, right? So he knows them and stuff like. So hopefully it won't be as big of a, but like there's still gonna be a gap, right? Like once we get out of this lockdown, whatever that is, right? Like we're gonna have more social interactions, like everybody is. So it's probably definitely gonna be a process, but hopefully it won't be like nothing to everything for Ben. Like, I
right.
hope.
Yeah, no, like walking them is good because you expose them to people and all that stuff.
Yep.
You know, the neighbors and like what you said is good. That would just leave people coming into the home.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's completely different from everything else.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
And I don't hold it against the dog in the sense that he's just protecting the territory if it is a negative response that you're not wanting.
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't know, like, oh, at 6 o'clock, Auntie Sally's coming over and she's bringing her like nieces and stuff or whatever, right? He doesn't know that. He's just like, who are you and what are you doing in our home?
Mm-hmm.
Or he could be like, people, I love people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've not seen people in our house for months, and he's gonna be over the top, Then it's like, okay, well, we already got this foundation of stuff. How do we use this to fix this?
Yep.
Okay. Trying to think if there was something I wanted to tell you. No, I think that was it. I think it was just the coming in part's gonna be a thing of its own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Other
All right.
questions?
I think that's it. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. We gotta just think about it, discuss it.
Yeah. I'll send you a link, a couple of links to some videos that I think will help you. I'm gonna send one of like kind of worst case scenario because I made one a long time ago, where I talk about training stable dogs versus unstable dogs.
Okay.
And that's usually one that I always push people towards because it gives them a kind of spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll give you one. I'll send you a more recent one. So with the social distancing, I'm not making contact with the dogs or anything. It's all verbal instruction. And whether you do prong or the e-collar, don't buy your own e-collar. If I'll let you know which one to get whenever you make a decision.
Yeah.
If you just send us a link for that,
Yeah,
too,
send us a
just
link
so we have an
can
idea.
order that.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario, okay, and don't do this out of guilt. Do this because you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when it comes to pets. If you don't end up adopting them or taking them, or you decide otherwise, okay, it sounds like you're looking to get a dog at some point.
Yes.
Okay.
Already all the equipment.
I'm going to talk to Maria, and down the line, if you get another dog and you want to get the dog trained, you can have your credit towards that dog.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Because it's very easy for people to get guilted into a situation, and I've had it happen plenty of times, unfortunately. Rescues are all about impounds and all that stuff. They just want to get the dogs out. And we actually had a lady who, and that's actually one thing I want to talk to you about. So we might go a little longer. You guys okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
I got a call a month ago about a lady that got a dog. It was a pit. And I'm picking up some similarities here. Okay, so I'm like, is this the dog? But the dog ended up being leash reactive, and they picked up the dog. They didn't say anything about this. Took the dog, had the dog only for like a couple of days.
Okay.
And the dog was lunging after people. Okay, they contact me, and I go, sounds like overstimulation, blah 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 blah. I was like, as long as you just take these precautions in the meantime until we get things started, right?
Yep.
Well, they didn't really follow that rule, and they were having people over, and the dog ended up, I think, snapping at a child. It was a relative's kid. That was the last straw for them. So they never did training.
Yeah.
But
I don't think. Well, we don't know the whole
It could
story.
be that
The only thing the volunteer told us was they were walking him, and the husband and wife were walking, and he lunged at the wife, and that was like the husband was like, "We're not doing this anymore." I don't know if there was more to the story. I don't know if like that's
April too.
Yeah, this like he got adopted April 3rd and returned on like the 5th or 6th. Like it was very quick.
Yeah, because I know this call was in April.
Yeah.
So I don't think it is, because I think they had it longer than just 3 days. But it was a pit, and I didn't get to see the dog or anything like that. And this was before I was doing the Zoom.
Yeah.
Phone. But I'm curious. I'm probably gonna go back and like dig through my email in there and whatever. But in my book, I think that could have all been prevented. They just kept trying to push towards, normalcy.
Yeah.
They weren't ready.
roll this.
Yeah,
You can't make this happen.
Yeah, exactly. And like luckily right now for us, we're not really being pressured because like the pound has less dogs than they've ever had in like 10 years, right? And like the volunteer's been very open with us about like Penn's bad versus good behavior. Like she's told us everything. So we are lucky in the sense of I don't feel like we're being pressured just because like of this time and the time the volunteers put in. And also they're worried because he's already been returned. So if he gets adopted again and returned, he will there's like 99% chance he's going to get euthanized. So like they don't want that. So we are lucky in that sense, but yeah, we just want to make sure we're making the right decision for us and of course Penn.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds probably different. He's most likely is different because I remember when Maria spoke with her again to follow up, and she was like, "Yeah, they told us that they did tell us that he had these behaviors prior to giving him to them, but they didn't." So I hear some crazy stuff from rescues, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's not everybody, obviously.
No.
But that's always something that I tell people to be mindful of because
it's definitely fair. Yeah.
I feel like if anything, they've been trying to be very forthright because they don't want him to get adopted.
Sarah's like, here's the list of his shit, and we're like, okay. And like for the most part, I was like, no, this really scares me. And then when we handled him, I was like, he's not really scaring me. Like he's a handful, and he needs to be trained. But I'm not afraid. Like that's like my biggest thing. And like I handled him for at least an hour. So like they've been the volunteers have been very good about like being like very transparent about all the dogs, their worst behavior, and then like where they think they can go, because they're like if you adopt them and bring them back, like usually they get euthanized. Like right now we're lucky because they have like less than 50 animals in the shelter, but like we're hopefully going to get out of this at some point. And where does that end up, right? Like then they have to start euthanizing again. So, but yeah.
Then he'd end up with a second strike, then he'd be higher on the list.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So I'll send you an email to the one that you sent to us with a few links, and then feel free, of course, to watch as much as you want. And then you make your decision, you let us know, and then I'll talk to Maria to give her a heads up about, if you decide not to, when you get a dog down the line, we'll just credit you.
Perfect.
We'll handle the rest, okay?
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Take care.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you.